start into section 1.1. Chapter 1 deals with the essentials of geometry, introducing some of those things that you're going to need, like points, lines, planes, and those ideas and those concepts. Right. Your opener here today says, is it possible for two planes to intersect at a line segment? Now, when we talk about a plane, we're not talking about the things that fly in the sky. We're talking about something that's an idea. It's similar to a shape. It's something that looks like the ceiling or the floor or the wall around you, except the idea is those borders aren't going to be there. In a plane, they continue extending forever. Think about a coordinate plane when you graphed your lines last year in Algebra 1, right? That coordinate plane kept going, right? It didn't stop at 10. It didn't stop at 20, right? It kept going forever. It's the same idea here. When you look at that front wall, it continues up through the ceiling, through the roof, down through the floor, out into the hallways that are there, right? The ceiling goes into the room that is next to you. It goes out into the hallways, so they continue forever. A line segment does not. Since a line segment stops, when these two planes intersect, they cannot form a line segment. So it is going to be no. The idea of a plane is something that looks like this. Right? When you look at this, these two planes, whenever they intersect, these planes, all of their borders continue forever. So it continues this way, it continues this way, it continues this way, it continues this way. Well, when those two planes intersect then, that intersection has to continue both ways forever also. So a line segment stops if it's going to continue forever. Instead, we are looking at a line. Right? And that's one of the ideas you'll see later on today. Right? But we start with the very building block, the foundation of geometry, is a point. Right? A point is technically just a little dot that you're used to looking at. But that dot doesn't have dimension to it. A point has no dimensions and is represented by a dot. It doesn't have a width or a length or a height to it. Right? When we talk about that dot can be formed if it's the intersection of 2 points. Or sorry, the intersection of two lines. So when these two lines intersect, they form this point here, which typically you'll name it as P or X or Y. They give it a name. So that's point P. And when we go to refer to it, we can do one of two things. We can write it as point P with a little point that's there, or we can actually call it point P. Now, when we get to your Chapter 1 test, this is actually going to be one of the very first two questions on it. The intersection of two lines is a blank. Well, your answer then, the intersection of two lines, is a point. We talk about it having no dimension, but something has to be there. Right? I can't tell you to look at this coordinate plane and tell me where is point P. When you look, you need something to look at. That's why we say it is represented by a dot. Now that I put point P up there, now you can look and say, oh, well, point P is at that coordinate of 1, 2. Right? That's why it has to be represented by something. As for your next idea is the idea of a line. A line has one dimension, and then it is represented by a line that then has two arrows, one on each side. Those arrows signify that it continues forever. So when we're looking at a line, we are looking at something that looks like this. That line has two names to it. You can name it as line AB, because those are the 2 points that make up your line. Now, you can switch the order, so technically I guess you would say it had 3 names to it, because you can call it line BA also. And finally, it actually has a specific name to it. This lowercase cursive letter here is going to be the specific name to your line. So it is actually going to be also called line L. So 2 different ways you can name a line. You can name it by 2 points that are on it, or by that specific letter that's there. Then your third idea is the idea of a plane. We talked about the idea of a coordinate plane. Well, the idea of a plane is very similar. It has two dimensions, a length and a width, or a base and a height, depending on what terminology you want to use. It goes left and right and up and down. It is represented by a shape similar to the wall or the floor. But once again, remember, you have to keep in mind those borders technically aren't there. They go on forever. But in order to have something to look at, we have to draw those borders in. Now, we can look at your plane, right? And that's what's highlighted there in yellow. But we have to keep in mind that it continues forever. When you name a plane, you can name it two different ways. You can name it by its specific name, or you can name it by 3 points that make it up. The 3 points that make up my plane here are points A, B, and C. So you can call it plane ABC. Notice I did not use point M. Point M is not a point. It doesn't have that little dot next to it. That capital letter, typically in a corner of your plane, is the specific name to it. So we can also call it plane M. So those are the two different ways you can name a plane. When I look at my example I threw up here for you, when you name your plane, it can have a specific name. Well, look for your capital letter that does not have a point next to it. So we can call it plane Z. Likewise, you can name it with 3 points that make your plane. Well, here on my plane, there are 4 points. There's one little caveat, one little stipulation about the points you pick. When I go to pick those points, they cannot lie on a line together. Notice points A, B, and C can all be connected by a line. I cannot name this plane ABC then. It has to have a second dimension to it. I can pick 2 points on that line, such as A and B, or A and C, or B and C, but then I need my third point to not be on that line. That's where my point D comes into play. I can call it plane ABD, ACD. I can start with D. I can call it plane DBC. You don't have to go in alphabetical order. Right? You can name it any of those type of planes. So that's how you name your plane. That idea of things lying on the same line, like these 3 points, A, B, and C were, we call that being collinear. Collinear points are points that lie on the same line, such as points A, B, and C here. Coplanar points, they are points that lie on the same plane then. So there are points A, B, and C there. Take a look at your example. Example 1 says, give 2 other names for line LN. So here's line LN. First, if we wanted to, that line LN has a specific name to it. You're looking for that little lowercase letter towards the end of your line. So we can call it line B. Secondly, you can name it by picking any 2 points on it. Well, they picked points L and N originally, so we'll do L and you could do M. You could do M and N. Any of those will work. So you write your 2 points down and make your little line on top of it. Now, they also wanted us to do 2 different names for plane Z. Well, plane Z, they already took this specific name for it. So I need to pick 3 points that are on it. When we look at my plane has points L, M, N, and P. Q does not lie on my plane. It lies up above it. So there's my 4 points. I can pick any 3. They just cannot lie on the line together. So I can pick 2 from my line. I could do L and M, but then I cannot use N. I have to use P. I could pick plane. I can pick M and N. And then I cannot pick L. I have to pick P. That's how you name your planes. For question B, it says name 3 points that are collinear, 3 points that lie on the line. Well, we only have one line up there. We have points L, M, and N that are all collinear. When I look at my plane, it says name 4 points that are coplanar. That would be L, M, N, and P. They were the 4 points that we had to choose from when we were naming our plane. That's what those terms mean. All right, a couple quick building blocks to finish up talking about here. First one is the idea of a line segment. As we talked about in the opener, a line segment ends, so it has a beginning and an end point. It's a line with 2 endpoints. Points A and B. A ray has one endpoint and then goes one direction and continues that direction forever. Now, when you name a segment, hopefully it'll get there. When you name a segment, we can name it segment AB with the 2 dots above it, or you can name it segment BA. In a segment, it doesn't matter. In a ray, though, it does. In a ray, when I look at this one, this has to start at A and then go to B because that's the direction the arrow points. So this is the ray we're looking at. Ray BA would have started at B and gone through A. It would have started here and gone this way. That's not what our picture did, so I cannot call it ray BA. So in a ray, order matters. In a line is technically a set of opposite rays. Opposite rays are 2 rays that make up a line. They must share an endpoint. Meaning when I look at this picture here, when I go to name my opposite rays, they have to share the endpoint. That means one ray would be A and going through B. The other ray would be A and going through C. That way they share that endpoint of A. So ray AB and ray AC are your opposite rays. All right, take a look at our example then. In A, it says give another name for line VX. So here's line VX. To name a line, we can name it by naming 2 points on it or the little lowercase letter by it. Well, there's no little lowercase letter at the end of either of my arrows. So I can't name it that way, so I have to name it with 2 points that are there. Well, just pick 2 points on that line. You have V, W, and X to choose from. And even though there is no dot by W, we know the intersection of 2 lines is a point. So point W does exist. So we can call it WX if we wanted to. For B, it says name all rays with an endpoint of W. So we start at W, and we talk about the directions we can go. We can do WX. We could do WY. We can do WV. We could do WZ. Second part then wants to know which of these rays are opposite rays. So which ones go in opposite directions? Which ones make a line together? Well, WX and WV make that line. WY and WZ make that line. So that's a second set of opposite rays. All right, the last few questions here really have you talking about drawing a diagram. And the only reason I put this in there is because I want you to be able to see that it can be difficult, and I understand that, to draw certain things. So in the first one, it wants you to draw a line on a plane. Well, Draw your line on a plane. Now, for the second one, it wants you to draw a line that is parallel. I'm sorry, a line that is not on the plane. So for most of us want to go and draw some type of plane that looks like this. And say, oh, well, I'll just put the line up here then. Well, keep in mind, this plane, it extends up forever. So it will intersect that line. Right? So I can't do it that way. So I draw it this way. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like my old drawing. But this one was on the plane. I need to be able to make a little note then. If I need to, I can make a little note saying, well, this line actually lies in front of my plane. The key is I have to add a second part in. It had to be parallel to the plane. And these little two lines going up and down here is an abbreviation for parallel, if you forget from Algebra 1. Next one talks about your line going through your plane and intersecting at one point. In order for it to go through the plane, picture a pencil going through the three-hole punch, or a hole that was punched in the piece of paper. Right? It starts in the back and comes through the front. It's going to look something similar to this. Once again, one of the things to note in a picture is typically if it goes behind the figure, it becomes a dotted line. Okay. Any questions we have as we finish up here, please make sure, email me, or just stay on after the video and we'll have our lesson. This is going to be kind of the layout that we have in most of these weeks. The last one says sketch two intersecting planes. And it says what vocabulary word is formed at the place where the two planes meet? Well, my planes kind of look like this, but if I want them to intersect, now they are intersecting. That intersection, the word we use, two planes intersect to form, and this is what we talked about in the opener, intersects to form a line. That's actually going to be the second question of your Chapter 1 test. Question number 1 is going to say the intersection of two lines is a blank. Question number 2 is going to say the intersection of two planes is a blank. And now you have your two answers. All right, I'm going to give you your homework now. As I said, once you watch this video, the Zoom chat room will still be open. Come in, ask questions if you want. You can start on your homework there if you want. Or if you want to log off, that is completely up to you. Just make sure your homework is done for tomorrow. Your homework here tonight is pages 5 to 7 in your book, numbers 2 to 38, the evens. All right, if you have questions, make sure you bring them up in the Zoom meeting, and then we'll be back on the same Zoom meeting tomorrow to start into 1.2.